Hey everybody, Theta, back again with another stone-faced reactions. Here to do a character ranking for the characters in Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, and I've decided the movie as well. Some of you might be like, that's not fair. The movie was bad. They'll bring everybody down. You know what? That's the fault of the movie, not mine. Um, but in some fairness, I've decided to create a new test system by which we might be ranking characters in the future. Obviously not Gundam because we're doing that in a different way, but from here on out, for say my own use, or for me and Griff watch a separate show and we decide we like this, let's rank the characters. We might use it there as well. Uh, it's going to go off of a 5 point system, or I should say 5 bullet point system. Different points involved. I'm just confusing. And then hold on. First point, distinctive personalities. Assess whether the character possesses a unique and well-defined personality that goes beyond common stereotypes. 2. Compelling backstory. Evaluate the presence of an engaging and meaningful backstory that adds depth and context to the character's actions. 3. Iconic visual design. Examine whether the character has a visually striking and memorable design, including distinctive features, outfits, and expressions. 4. Emotional resonance. Analyze whether the character evokes strong emotions or resonates with the audience on a personal level. And 5. Significant character development. Consider whether the character undergoes a meaningful growth and development throughout the story. Uh, Obviously, this reads as though I didn't make it myself. I sort of didn't. I created the 5 categories, and then I used to use ChatGPT to express what those categories should say to help me put it into more of an authoritative definition. Right? I wanted it to read well when I described it to you. But yeah, those are the 5 things that I think makes a good character. Now, whether or not that's going to express itself here, leave a comment below at the end and tell me, ah, your system sucks. you know, let me know how I can finagle this. I even wrote down little examples for myself so that I have context, right? So when I think about these characters, I'm still not just going like, ah, it's a 1, that's a 2, you know? Because that was the problem with the original system. The original system is we would look at a character, that feels like a 6 character to me, based on nothing and without anything to go by. I feel like that's disingenuous to the characters. So, for example, iconic visual design. A 1 would be a generic character from any slice of life anime, right? Background characters are intentionally designed to be unremarkable. A 10 would be like Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece. The straw hat, the scar under his eye, his outfit, it's all easily recognizable. He's a standout visual appearance. Say backstory. 1010 from Naruto would be a 1. Her backstory, when compared to everybody else in that series, is lacking. I love 1010. She's a great character. She doesn't get a lot of attention. Versus 10, Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. She gets a lot of development as the show goes on, and her relationship with Roy adds depth and emotional weight to her character. One more example here. See, emotional resonance. Excalibur from Soul Eater. You know, the little white animal looking thing. Uh, he's meant to be a humorous character, and some people might find him more annoying than emotionally resonant, leading to a lower ranking. That's why he'd be a 1 versus a 10. Itachi Uchiha, another Naruto example here. His complex backstory and all his sacrifices that he does on behalf of what he's up to, right? Give him a more. I'm gonna have to edit that. I don't think Itachi is a 10. I'm gonna have to come up with my own examples here. Again, this is a work in progress list, but this is what we're working with here. So now that you know where I'm settling from or where I'm coming from, let's start getting into the characters. And again, once again, let me know at the bottom comments how I can adjust this list, make it better, because it's is always a work in progress, and I want to be somewhere down the line giving you exactly what I think with the math to back it up. But first off, we've got Nadia, the titular character of the show. Nadia goes back and forth a lot, but thankfully the majority of her backsliding happens in the island arcs, which I can forgive since I know how those happened. Even the Africa trio of episodes where she forgets about Jean completely to fall for some random guy she just met was all a product of bad internal communication and storyboarding from the studio. If you cut out everything but the serious bits from the island arc and merge them with episodes 1 through 22 and then 35 onwards, I think 35 is where it gets back to seriousness again. She's exactly what you'd expect for her to be. I said sometime during the movie that I was surprised that she wanted to become a reporter and was still dealing with all that nonsense her bosses were giving her, whether that be from racism or misogyny, and that she should have just written a story of her life so far, even if just as a ghostwriter. Then at the end of the movie, that's what she decides to do before moving back to Jean to eventually have the life we saw at the end of the show's wrap up. Oh, also, working as a reporter, the nature loving Nadia who talks to animals suddenly living in the big city. It's such a massive turn from who the character is. So, I've basically given her high ranks in everything. I think her iconic visual design is like the highest that I've given her, but everything else, she doesn't go below an 8, which makes her overall score here a 21.5, which puts her in S tier. I'm just trying to think here. Normally, again, I've pointed out before that the numbers next to this would normally be because it'd be my score and Griffin's score combined. But I hadn't really thought this through, so we're just gonna put them in an order that makes sense to this. This probably still works out just fine. Probably has to get reworked when I talk to Griff and we do all our things. Alright, who's next? Next up is Jean. Where are you, Jean? Where are you, Jean? Oh, you are. Sorry, I went blind for a second. Deal with a little bit of pain today. Despite not being named in the title, our second main character gets the most screen time in the entire series. At least it feels like that to me. It's his antics in Paris that lead us on the entire journey, as arguably, if he hadn't taken Nadia with him, they would never have gotten stranded in the water, encountered the Nautilus, let go to the island to find Marie. None of it. He is the protagonist instigator to push us all, to push the plot forwards. His inventions are only reliable in that you can rely on them failing. The only time this wasn't true was in this daydream during the cartoony bits. I think his character remained the most stable across the entire series, whether that was due to underreacting to certain things put before him, or that despite the lessons learned and changes made, he remained true to who he was the entire time. Even come the movie, I don't think we can blame him for being so close to Fuzzy, as that was the sense of wanting to help people that started this all when he chose to run off with Nadia at the Eiffel Tower. I think the highest that I've given Jean here was in significant character development, but otherwise, everything else about Jean is just slightly above the halfway point for everything, right? He's not that iconic visually. He's just some dude who wears glasses. I've never felt that emotionally resonant with him except for maybe the Africa trio, and even then, that was just a low performing episode. And yeah, he's got a middling personality because he's just like a normal dude. So Gene is not that high rank for me. Overall, I gave him a score of 15. Next up, we've got Marie. There you are, Marie. I believe I said through the entire show that if anything happened to Marie, I'd quit watching. Go figure they'd pull the rug out from under me by not having her in the movie, thus killing my last chance to threaten that at all. She was one of the most adorable kids I've ever seen in anime. When she looked like she was going to cry, I knew why and felt like I was going to along with her. Her backstory was so sad that every time Jean and Nadia got close to explaining to her what happened, I balled up inside, tense at how this would go. She had a few down moments in the show, but those were really only when the show itself was down. Overall, she rode the heights of the show as high as they would go. The most disturbing thing to me about the movie is not only the Marie's absence, but the absence of any of her continued existence in any personal location that we see in the movie. There is no evidence that we can see that she stays with Nadia. She clearly isn't living with Jean, and I don't recall him mentioning her when he brings up his aunt and uncle. Grandis, Hanson, and Sanson, clearly are not living a life where they've settled down to have a place where she could live. All I can think is that they got back to civilization and gave Marie up for adoption. That completely destroys the warm feelings I had about seeing Nadia and Jean as mom and dad figures, and makes me extremely sad imagining how much she would cry at having to be taken away from them. That she later finds Sanson again to marry him and have his kid is a little more than a miracle, a creepy, disturbing miracle. Clearly, obviously, I gave her a 10 on emotional resonance, as well as compelling backstory. I know it's not the most in depth backstory, even in the show, but it hits you. It hits you because it's a child that it's happening to. Overall, though, I've given her a 20, which puts her up here next to Nadia. Okay, next up we have King. King, there you go, buddy. King was one of the best mascots for a show that we've gotten on the channel. If I were ranking characters for being memorable, then the only other mascot coming to mind at the moment would be a Haru. But then that might not be fair considering how bad my memory really is. King showed a wide range of emotion, kept Marie company when she needed a friend, and before the crazy cartoonish episodes, showed he was a very intelligent animal. Oddly, despite Nadia professing an ability to speak to animals, she never did that with King, who always seemed to just understand English. A lot like Marie, I was so disappointed and confused by King's absence from the movie. He was Nadia's comfort animal for the entire first half of the show. Granted, he got overused in the worst third of the show, but that also served to make us used to his presence. So when he gets left out of everything alongside Marie at the end of the show, his absence was felt. Right until we get the flash forwards of him raising his own family exactly as Marie imagined as a child. Thankfully, she gave up the idea of him becoming her husband, not that it would have been any less creepy than what really turned out to happen. I ranked King high in iconic visual design. We just don't get that many animal characters in these shows, so he's obviously easy to spot. Otherwise, I had to rank him real low on compelling backstory. I'm sure maybe I'm forgetting something about Nadia's flashbacks to the circus, because I mean the episodes that this happened in kind of made it hard. But otherwise, I can't remember him having a compelling backstory. He's just with Nadia, as well as significant character development. Kind of low there, below average, not low. Uh, he doesn't really develop. He develops in the same way of Nadia coming together with Jean at the end of Red Noah and then forgetting about him at the start of the Africa trio, in that he becomes very sad that Nadia and Jean are becoming a thing, and then completely seems to forget about it moving forwards. So he is a victim of the success of the show, I guess, to NHK. Overall, I've given him a score of 13, posting him just below Jean. Alright, next up we have Grandis, who I always want to say is Granadis, the leader of our Team Rocket inspiration. As much as I love this crew throughout the show, I can't help but feel all three members were harmed by their appearances in the movie, especially Granadis. Or Grandis. Again, I'm doing it. I guess I wanted to do what I did it. Two of my most memorable scenes with her. One was her backstory of being suckered by a suave man just out for her riches, and how it cost her family everything. The other was about her glass ring that materially was worth nothing, but meant everything to her, as it symbolically meant everything to her mother. If she hadn't shown up in the movie, I'd be scoring her incredibly high in character development just off of that, and her conversations with Nadia. The person she becomes in the movie completely destroys that development, instead choosing to return to who she was before the show started. It was a sad twist, but at least we know she'll get it better in a few years. I, of course, ranked her high on personality and iconic visual design. I remember all the time she has a heart to heart with Nadia, and that really made her a good person, and it developed her highly. I mean, really, she doesn't go anywhere above. Sorry, she didn't go anywhere below normal. When I say normal, I mean like a 5 in a score. She didn't go anywhere below 5 in her scoring. Like I said, I had to give her a low score in character development because of the movie, and I said the movie might hurt the characters, and it did. Overall, I gave her a 17.5, making her slightly ahead of Jean. There you go. Who is next? Next up, I think probably my second favorite character. You might be noticing I say Marie is my favorite character, and she's second in ranking. So that's kind of how the system is working. My favorite characters don't get preferential treatment. Sanson was my favorite character among the Team Rocket crew, which is funny because I normally go for the smart guys over the brawny guys. Sanson not only brought the brawn, but the heart as well. When someone needed to keep an eye on Marie, Sanson was there to do it, even if it meant degrading himself below what he thought he should be as a dandy. The man wrestled a truck-powered mech, was a crack shot with a gun, and almost seemed willing to sacrifice his life for others. But thankfully, it never came to that. Our original backstory for him was that he was one of the only two people that stuck around when Grandis's family's fortune was lost. But we also got a glimpse of how he was a lanky kid that built himself up to the dandy he is today. The movie tried to ruin all of that, but I felt like Sanson came out of it the least touched, as despite his loss against the robot halfway through the film, he used that character development from the show to build himself up to beat another robot at the end of the film. That callback to earlier development made it worthwhile to see our man Sanson again. Now, I ranked him the highest in distinctive personality because I think back to all those scenes with him and Marie, like him dressed up as a baby to entertain Marie back when she had nobody else to have around with her. Because that speaks highly to what he is like as a person. He's very vain and he's very proud of himself, but he's not above putting himself above others, which makes him a great character. So by overall, I gave him a score of 19, just behind Marie. Alright, next up we have Hanson, the other half of the white coat wearing duo under Grandis. Just like Donatello, Hanson does machines. Being a normal human without access to Atlantean tech, the man creates the Graton, a tank that can do anything and can hold its own against human-made Neo-Atlantean technology. In the movie, they essentially make a boat version of the Graton to replace the previous one's sacrifice at the end of the show. I'll always remember his wanting to get Electra's attention somehow, going as far as to make flowers for her from stuff he found around the ship. Of course, we know he doesn't wind up with her. Guess he got dissuaded once he found out about the Nemo situation. Still, becomes the pre-World War I Tony Stark, which ain't half bad at all. I think I gave him the highest on emotional resonance, especially for that whole Electra story arc that he goes through in the early Nautilus episodes. Overall, though, I think he's just basically right up there with Sanson in most of these rankings, in that he does a lot of the same stuff Sanson does. They're back to back the whole show. Overall, I've given him a 16.5, putting him just above Jean but below Grandis herself. Next up, we have Emperor Neo. Emperor Neo, half of my guess as to who was going to end up being Nadia's brother. I kept making fun of his stand-up eye opening right up until I realized he was a robot and being consistently subdued by Gargoyle's control, at which point he goes from somewhat boring villain to sympathetic victim, a card they played well at the very end when he comes to his senses enough to use everything he has to save his sister. Unfortunately, since that reveal is given so late, we don't get much of anything in the way of revealing what Gargoyle did to him in escaping Atlantis to make him this way. Also, the fact that he's essentially being subdued right up to the moment of his death robs him of any personality he would have on his own. So, I mean, he gets top marks for iconic visual design. Nobody's going to argue this. Nobody that's not a huge Yu-Gi-Oh fan, I guess, anyway. Otherwise, he kind of lacks in a lot of different categories. I put him above average on a lot of things, but that's due to the weight that they give it all at the very end. And come on, the fact that the last shot we got of him is his robot corpse with a brain hanging out of it. A lot of the stuff is more implied than other characters who lack that same backstory element, and I'm giving that implication a lot of more weight than I might otherwise. Thus, I gave him an overall score of 18.5, putting him just above Grandis, but just below Sanson. Next up, actually, you know what? Hold on, let me move King down here. I'm just going to follow the chart at all. I think King would be on the next tier down. Next up, we have my most hated of all, Ayerton. Ayerton is going to be where this new scoring system is going to fail me, as there are characters I like so much more than this asshole. Unfortunately, he has elements that tick boxes for the scoring system that I cannot overlook unless I wanted to lie, and then what would be the point? I have to score him high on personality and resonance. I hate him so much. That's what emotional resonance is. I wouldn't hate him if it weren't for his personality and actions. So in that regard, I have to give it to him. My immense dislike for what he does with Grandis makes him more than just a background character, despite what all his other scores would suggest. If he were just to have stayed on board the American warship and been a quirky side character we saw twice, he would have been fine. But he had to show back up in the island arc and be given a kooky backstory that we decided to carry on into the epilogue. Hate him. I mean, I scored him highly on emotional resonance, as I just said. My hatred for him is emotional. He has a distinctive personality. It's a bad personality, but it's fucking distinctive. Otherwise, significant character development? None. He just shows up with a new backstory halfway through the show. Iconic visual design? He looks like a background character. You could confuse him for an older Gene if you wanted to. Uh, Overall, I've given him a 12.5. He lands behind the baby tiger, the baby lion. Next up, we got the Sonar Man, Eiko. Eiko was one of our bridge crew that was quick to crack a joke when things seemed at their worst. Chief among the fan club for the doctor's daughter, and eventually her husband as well. Uh, then, of course, clarification. Eventually, he becomes her husband as well. Not that he's a fan club for the daughter's husband. That'd be weird. Unfortunately, that's about all he has going for him. His backstory is generally just the backstory of everyone else on the ship. He looks like most of the other ship crew as well. He's essentially the Frei of the show. And by Frei, I don't mean Futurama, I mean Frei of the movie. I think his highest rank I've given him is in character development, because he pays off on the whole fan club thing. He's got a middling personality. Cracking jokes is fine. He does it twice. Normal people crack jokes. It doesn't make him better at it. So, overall, he gets a 9. I like him more than Ayerton, but the scoring system doesn't lie. That puts him down here below even them. Next up, we got the captain himself, Captain Nemo. Our mysterious captain, enigmatic and mysterious right up until we see his blue crystal for the first time. That's when I started guessing all of his backstory traits that turned out to be true 20 episodes later. The fact I was able to guess it certainly didn't take anything away from the reveal later on. Nadia's father, King of Atlantis, one of the last Atlanteans, on a final trek of revenge to bring an end to Gargoyle and Neo Atlantis before they can ruin the world. It's all very motivating once it's all locked in, and the moment it's locked in, he has to seemingly sacrifice himself to ensure his daughter can survive. Honestly, he's hitting all the major points of the character ranking, with really his only failings being the fact that his development mingles in with Electra's in a fairly disturbing way. I will always remember our badass captain bleeding out, sacrificing himself for his crew one final time. He almost gets perfect scores. Obviously, he gets 10s in compelling backstory, iconic visual design, emotional resonance. He gets a little less than perfect when you come to distinctive personality because he's just cold most of the time. And when he opens up, he's not better than a normal person. Also, significant character development. Most of his character development comes in backstory more so than it does actual play on screen. And then it's at the very end when he's sacrificing himself twice. And those only lead us into horrible parts. I mean, I've given him like 8s, right? So he's high ranking. I'm just saying that it's less than perfect for me. Overall, I've given him a 23, which puts him right above Nadia. Let's go ahead and move everyone back a little bit. Next up, we have Electra, First Officer. Electra almost feels like 3 different characters to me. We have the early teacher Electra that calmly keeps the kids in line on their first visit to the Nautilus, for some reason decided to disguise herself with a mask even though no one knew her, and even her backstory regarding Nadia and Nemo didn't cross paths to suggest that she thought it was possible that Nadia would know her. Then there was backstory drop Electra, who we saw a couple of times before she pulled a gun on Nemo, namely every time they turned away from a garfish and she got angry. Finally, there's Rye Electra, or Ray. I don't know how you Evangelion fans say it. I'm going to say Ray now. Ray Electra, clad in a spacesuit and suffering all the indignities of Ray from Eva. Some weird crap goes on with her story, like Nemo treating her as his surrogate daughter and then leaving her off pregnant with his kid. It's stuff like that which really messes with the scoring system I've come up with. That's some significant ass character development, even if I like it or not. I think her highest I've ranked was her distinctive personality and her significant character development. Otherwise, she's a high-ranking character with just enough going for her. I've given her an overall score of 18.5, which I believe puts her right on par with Emperor Neo himself. Next up, we got Gargoyle, the big bad of the series, and for some reason the measuring stick you are meant to put Geigar against later on come movie time. I think the fact that I was constantly trying to guess who Gargoyle was and what he was up to during most of the important parts of the show goes a long way to suggest where I would rank him. I wouldn't say that he had developed a lot as a character throughout the show, but I think there was the very end where he realizes his mistake and the regret comes in his final words. That was more than enough to push him up the scale. Something Geigar could have learned from. In the realm of visual design, I don't think we will be forgetting the appearance of Gargoyle for some time to come. Someone opened an evil closet and said one of everything. I think his real failing as a character is his backstory and emotional resonance. You understand why he is doing some things, but the reasoning isn't something that makes you feel anything for him. He has a backstory, so already better than some characters, but that backstory isn't on the scale of the other characters and doesn't get built upon all that much. So yeah, no big surprise that I've given Gargoyle an iconic visual design of 10. Look at the man. There's nobody else willing to look like that in anime that I can remember. Maybe not anybody outside of Hellsing, right? Or Hellsing Ultimate, rather. Overall, I've given him a score of 17.5, putting him right on the right on tail with the only other person wearing as much red as he is, Grandis or Grandis. All right, now we start moving into the movie territory. As you might notice, the only people we got left. Next is Fuzzy. Fuzzy really only spoke in exposition, and not in the way you normally get exposition in. I recall her saying, "Fuzzy is dead," which was just literally true. The real Fuzzy died, and her dad made her. So when I joked about her dad looking like the guy from Astro Boy, it was just true. Now, I have no idea if I made that joke on my own or cause she inceptioned it into my head. I suppose I should include the memories of real Fuzzy in this as well, as both versions of her were equally as fuzzy. Really Fuzzy was clearly a girl with dreams that just up and gets murdered, and that sent her dad on a mission to save her, which he then realizes the folly of. Unfortunately, Fuzzy herself only serves as a mouthpiece for the story and as a reason for the characters to do things. Her gravesite at the end of the movie makes for a great callback to Marie's parents' graves, and a way for us to see at the very end that Nadia did what she said she was going to do. But none of that really expresses any real character for Fuzzy herself. Also, as an aside, I'm pretty sure, and it's hard to tell due to how blurred the movie is in places, that the title of the book Nadia wrote was The Mystery of Fuzzy. I'm 100% on the blank of Fuzzy, and that the second word starts with an M. If you know for certain, let me know in the comments. I wrote that and I instantly thought it might be Dr. Whola and Fuzzy. I'm certain of nothing. I've given Fuzzy a 1 in distinctive personality. The defining personality she has is that she has no personality. Otherwise, she is subpar in all scores. Her highest score is a 4 in compelling backstory, And I'm giving that to her for real fuzzy for the one scene that we got of her blowing out birthday candles and then getting murdered somewhere. We know nothing about real fuzzy other than her dad cared enough to make a new version of her after the original got murdered. So yeah, overall she has a score of 7, putting her below rather Eiko. Right, next up we have Albert Whola. There isn't a lot to say about Whola that is wholly unoriginal to himself. Sorry, that is wholly original to himself. I got lost in the joke there, the wordplay. He gets little screen time during the movie, but is one of the most important characters to the entire plot. He engineers Geigar's robot army by figuring out the remains of Atlantean tech, and his reason for doing so was to try and bring back his murdered daughter. That's a pretty biting backstory. Unfortunately, it all also feels like a ripoff of Astro Boy, right down to his look. In some ways, that helps out, given his lack of screen time. It gives a visual cue to help your imagination fill in the blanks. But most of his appearances are bland, but he makes up for that with his final appearance. Not only taking shots and giving them back, but pulling a Wrath of Khan on Geiger's base. By the way, my comments about the panel looking like the one Khan used, Wrath of Khan came out 9 years before the Nadia movie, so possible source of inspiration? I've given him a 3 in distinctive personality. He was just a jerk. Anybody can be a jerk. Give him a 7 though in significant character development. That final scene where he just goes kamikaze on everybody made up for his character all. I mean, we could put him in any show. That would have been amazing. Overall, though, I've given him a score of 13.5, which just puts him above Ayerton. Anything that pushes down Ayerton is always a good thing for me. Next up, we've got Frei. Frei was, well, he was a guy in the movie. He got fuzzy off the base, then tried to sell what he knew to the newspaper. He had a couple of funny interactions with Nadia, but that was about it. Not much about him really stuck out in any way other than his dismissal of Nadia as wanting to be a reporter. Even his appearance didn't stand out much. Clearly an elevated background character. Like, he has no backstory. I gave him a 1 for compelling backstory because they didn't even try. Iconic visual design, I gave him a 2. He kind of looked different from some characters, but otherwise, I guess maybe I'm being soft on him for not giving him a 1. His highest character trait, I gave him a 4 for distinctive personality, because much like Eiko, being funny once isn't much of a personality trait, right? So overall, he gets a 6.5, putting him even below Fuzzy. Alright, and lastly, we have Geigar. The main villain of the movie looks like Dr. Wily's grandpa. Honestly, I couldn't think of a better example of a character in such a main story position that could have had less of a score in these new rankings. His backstory nearly doesn't exist. He's not doing anything for any perceptible reason that you would care about, and he enters the movie the same guy he exits the movie as. The fact that I basically have to give him some points for literally being Dr. Wily from Mega Man puts him in the same field as Whola, piggybacking on my feelings and memories of other characters. The difference is, Whola pulled out some amazing last minute character development where Geigar cackled his way out of my memory. I've given him 3 1s in 3 different categories. His best category is iconic visual design for once again maybe looking like Dr. Wily's grandpa. He has a distinctive personality of a 4, only because, we all know the cackling evil scientist character. And that is, at best as I could give him, he gets an overall score of 6. So there you go. There you have it. That is my character rankings for all the characters. from Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, as well as Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, the movie or the motion picture. Disagree, agree, tell me, let me know in the comments.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stone-Faced Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?